Discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I got to abstain because I wasn't.
An abstention, 2 abstentions. Thank you, folks. Okay, so 2 abstentions. Public comment. Is anybody in the audience who would care to say something?
No, I'm good.
You're good?
Thank you.
I'll have to laugh with your comment.
All right. Okay, budget update. Last week, I promised everybody that we would have a as close to a closing operating statement as we could. So I wanted to hand that out to the group and preface this by saying that this particular operating statement was completed on July 19th. So now roughly a week ago. The final closing numbers for the college we're still on track to wrap up the 11-12 books on July 31st. So what you see here is pretty darn close. First of all, I'd be happy to entertain any questions that anybody has. But I would take you down to the red line at the bottom of the page where it talks about our net operating either surplus or deficit. We had projected to the Board of Trustees at it was the July 5th meeting, we did the cash flow report, that we would actually have roughly $1.5 million to roll over into the 12-13 budget. So according to this, we are at about 1.2. We're not done yet, so we're still thinking we might hit the 1.5, but we're very, very close to what we projected. So with that said, does anybody have any questions about any of these particular line items, either on the revenue side or on the expense side? Dan?
Well, okay, even though it's a red, that means that it's actually a plus because it's rolling.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the red just is the line that Marie used.
Okay.
But if it was in brackets, where it said, if the number was in brackets,
Okay.
like the one above it, the 5,000,003,
Yes.
that would indicate that in that particular case, we underspent that area by 5.3 million, which is a good thing because it helped offset some of the other things. So the point is, we are positive 1.2 million at the moment.
Okay.
So I'll give everybody another minute or two to begin to digest that, and then we'll take questions if we have any. Otherwise, we'll roll into other items on the agenda. Okay. Going once. I will say that it's good news in the sense that there is a positive as opposed to a negative. In a traditional PCC year, at the end of the year, we might have anywhere from $3 to $5 or $6 or $7 million to roll into the next year. But again, based upon the way that we've been forced to budget in recent years and the cutbacks that we continue to make, that number is now reduced. I will say, and I think I might have said this in the last meeting or so, we know that our personnel expenses defined as salary, health, welfare, and benefit represents about 89.75% of our total O-Fund operating budget. Most community colleges are operating around the 85% range. So we know we've got kind of a, if you will, a structural problem that we need to try to begin to address.
California.
Community colleges. Right, other colleges are operating better than that.
70 to 75%.
Yeah, 70, 75 now. I don't think California has ever seen that number, Dr. Bell, do you? 70, yeah.
Not my experience.
Yeah, but still, I remember the days where it was 80 to 85, and that was kind of the norm. And then, particularly since 2007, 2008, when the economy fell apart, it's been moving up closer. But when you get to that 90% level, it's not sustainable, and eventually it'll lead to major issues. The $10.5 million budget reduction scenario is pretty much the same as we have been discussing over the last couple of weeks. As a matter of fact, before my day/evening ends, I will be sending an email out to all managers asking them to provide to their area vice president by August 1st, so it's essentially next Wednesday, a plan for how they would reduce their non-classified hourly budget by 50%. And then that information will be considered by the vice presidents, and then we'll go from there. That's a $3 million part of our $10.5 million solution, is what 50% is. Yes, Ken?
With regard to the unclassified positions, this is those who are funded out of
01 only. 01 only,
not
yes.
category.
And I'll make that clear. Yeah, 01. So the 03, which the restricted monies that come in via grants and what have you, then those folks are fine because they're not part of the 01 budget. However, managers may get creative about how they, not in any way or shape out of sync with the grants, but still be able to leverage those people in other ways to try to help shore everything else up. So anyway, that's an example. If Dr. Rocha has said once to Dr. Bell and I, he said 18 times, 4,777 sections is our mantra in terms of the number of sections that we will mount next year, in order to make certain that we hit our savings target of roughly 3.1 or 3.2 million, whatever that number was, of sections. We're reducing the number of sections in 1213 by 578, if I remember correctly, multiplied by 5,000, 5,500, I forget what the cost was.
Because that's our portion.
That is hard savings that we would save, because each class, on average, from a adjunct faculty and or full-time faculty on overload basis, when you average it up, we use a number of $5,500 cost when you average it all up. And so if you take that 5,500, I think the number we use, multiplied by 578, you get 3.1, 3.2 million of hard saved dollars. Because right now we're looking for hard saved money to help with this budget shortfall. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, did you say 4,777?
4,777 sections
Sections.
totally mounted in the 12-13 year, of which we're already into that year. Crystal, roughly 195 or something like that, summer sections?
198, I believe, was the summer, and we're at 2,227 for the fall.
Say it again, sir?
198 for the summer,
Right,
and then right now we're at 2,227 for the fall.
for the fall. So you add those two numbers together, subtract that from 4,777, and that's the amount of sections that we have available for spring and winter. And at the present time, we are not planning on mounting any winter classes at the present time.
Would that 4,777 number change if the tax proposal gets passed in November?
It's very possible that it would change. If the tax initiative passes, we get $6.7 million, give or take, back. The problem is still the deferral problem in terms of when that money actually will land on our doorstep.
Right.
But yes, the proposal would be to, among other things, use some of those monies for additional sections. Now, I will say that the closing of the campus during the spring break netted about $106,000 or $107,000 of readily identifiable savings. As of the other day, I requested that Marie provide that money to Dr. Bell, to the Office of Instruction Cost Center, allowing him to use that money to mount additional classes. So 106,000 divided by 5,500 or whatever that amount of money is the number of sections that he will be able to mount with that money. Plus, the foundation has been doing its thing, and I know I've already warned my lovely wife that starting in July or whatever it is, that there's more money coming out of my check to go to that, but I'm happy to do it. The point is that people have pledged monies in order to mount additional classes through that grant. So that money will eventually find its way into the graduation fund as well, and as a result of that, we'll be able to mount some additional sections. John?
The deans in collaboration reduced a number of sections for the fall, I believe. Will those sections be subtracted from the 578, or do we have an additional 578?
No, the budget is built on the notion of the 4,777 sections. However you, the deans, and Dr. Bell get to that is fine. The number is 4,777, so it's however you guys get to that number. Does that answer your question? I don't know how we're getting there, but you're getting there.
Well, I just don't recall our starting number. If you recall, we had the retreat, Dr. Bell, and those sections were removed.
Yeah, what we did, John, in the summer, what we did in the summers, lead into the summer, the deans met, and basically what we were focused on then was a summer number, when I say number sections, and then focus out on the fall. So we were preliminary fall and focused on the summer number. And the number John is talking about, the target number, was a different number than we're talking about now because we didn't know our obligation number at that point.
I see.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
and that obligation number is in fact smaller. What we work with, our current number, is smaller. So your question whether or not those, ask your question again, make sure I answer it correctly.
Well, you know what, it did figure in because whether it came off the summer or the fall, it reduced the current obligation. That we reduced the current number of offerings, so it did affect.
It in fact 12, 13.
Yeah, I got it.
And Crystal is updating this chart, but in the fall of 2011-12, we mounted 2,361 class sections. I think, Crystal, you just reported this coming fall is what number right now?
2,227.
Very good. We had actually projected on this sheet 2,223. Darn, we're good, aren't we? So we're 4 above that number. So what that means, given our 4,777, Dr. Bell and myself and Crystal in particular, she's really tough. We are going to be questioning any new section that comes our way. We're going to have to question very much because if it's added in the fall, it's just one less available for the spring. Yes, Ken.
So, so I understand, the 4,777 is the total number for the next decade.
For 12-13.
12-13, so beginning of summer all the way to the
Right.
end of the spring. So, this is without knowing about the tax initiative.
Right.
So if the tax initiative does in fact pass, the 6.7 million will flow back to PCC, but is that money going to restore classes or go to the graduation fund to restore classes?
In the 10.5 million proposal, it states in there that if I remember correctly, the total 6.7 million would go to classes. Okay. So that is the intent right now. But life is such a moving target right now. Who knows exactly what would happen with that 6.7 million? but certainly a large amount of that, if not all of it, would go to restoring classes. Now, as Crystal has said to me on many occasions, and the college has said, there's only so much space on this campus, right, Crystal? There's only so many sections we can add unless we drive up online, which we could, or drive distance education, we could. You know, at the end of the day, we can only put stuff where we can put stuff. Now, we could certainly open on Sundays, and we could do weekend colleges, and we could do other things.
So this would affect mostly then, since winter is, you're not planning for winter out of the 4777, that really you were talking about spring.
Yeah.
So spring could be a very robust year if there's space, I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of sections.
Again, we've got a cash flow issue we've got to worry about, because we don't know when that money's coming in. But Dr. Bell, I think you were.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, you went where I was gonna go, okay, it'll affect spring and probably a very rich summer, you know, as well, because, as Bob's gonna say, the cash flow, if that's 6.7, if this is the pass and we get it, the money's gonna come to us, it's gonna be delayed. We don't expect to get the lion's share of that to what, May or June?
Right, overall 12, 13 monies, which I've said before lots of times, I'm sure you're getting tired of hearing me say it, is that roughly 40% of what we normally would get in the first half of the year is being deferred until the last quarter, and likely June of that last quarter. And we can't even take that to the bank either. I mean, this week alone, we've got some strange communication from, today is Thursday, 3 o'clock or so Tuesday afternoon, I got this email from the Chancellor's office and said, you know that $66 million you think that you got last year? Well, next year, or that you're supposed to get for this coming year, next year it's only going to be $49 million. Okay? Now, fortunately, we looked at it, we called them, we talked to them, and they realized it was a mistake, and they sent a correction to the whole system. But the point is, but yeah, you can blame them, but the reality is that they are having things thrown at them hourly up there with a staff that has gone from this over the years down to this. I mean, it's just a rough time for everybody out there right now, just trying to figure out this stuff. Okay, so,
Bob,
oh, yes, sir.
Let me see if I understand. So we are going to be able to offer 4,777 sections. With summer and fall, we've offered 24, 25 or so. That means we could offer, still be paid for roughly 2350.
Round numbers, that's right.
Now, we're to reduce 578 sections.
That's the reductions already built into that.
Got it.
The reduction's already built into that.
Okay. Well, it would,
And to make that clear, last year, as a total, we offered 5,355 sections. So if you did the math, hopefully you come up to 578. 55 minus 4,777. Yes, Crystal?
I think Dr. Bell was alluding to this, that we don't have to offer all of the additional sections in the spring.
Correct.
That anything that we start before July 1st could be added into the 12, 13 P3 totals. So I think that's what you were alluding to, Dr. Bell.
Yeah,
by having
exactly.
robust summer.
If the initiative, because my understanding is if the tax initiative passes in November, part of the 6.7 will get, there's a certain amount that they're saying now it's going to be earmarked for growth. And so we'll be obligated to build a certain number of classes based upon the growth they get. But those classes don't necessarily have to go into spring. They can go into summer, because any class that the college offers which has a start date before July 1st, 2013, can be counted into this year.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, I just want to get clarification on it. Does this money, if we get it, we're going to get it late, but does it have to be spent by June 30th?
No.
No, we can roll it over, Bob Bell just said we could roll it over to summer, can we roll it over to fall?
Well, with Bob Bell, I won't say what Bob Bell said. Bob Bell can say.
No, the rollover I'm talking about then is just the FTS you build in. So we are at 47,770. If we get a number which says, you know, Pasadena City College, you have to grow by a certain percentage.
Yeah.
So for sake of discussion, let's say we have to go from an obligation of 47,777 up to 5,000.
Yeah.
And what we could do is we could build in those additional FTS sections into the summer as long as those start dates for those classes were before July 1st.
Okay,
What you're talking about are the actual dollars.
yes,
Those would roll over
okay.
into the next fiscal year, all the way
Okay.
through into the following June.
So yes, Crystal?
I think the best way to say it is we have to earn it before July 1st, but we'll get it, we could get it and spend it
Right.
after July 1st.
And the 578 didn't just come from, we need to save $3.2 million. It came from what the projected funded FTES will be for next year. So this year, they paid us 19,520 FTS. So we were paid on the basis of 19,500 FTS on roughly $4,600 per FTES. This is on credit. Next year, because of that 7.13% workload reduction, which translates into $6.7 million in money, it brings our funded FTES base down to 18,271. So the 4,777 classes, it's roughly 3.9 FTES per section. When you do the math and make it all work, we will end up about 360 FTES overfunded, which is a comfortable place to be. The point is that we're mounting classes that we know we're going to get paid for with our reasonable cushion, as opposed to mounting classes, for example, in 2009-10 we offered 5,611 sections and we left almost 1,500 FTES on the table. We funded classes, so 1,500 times 40, they say $4,200 back then, or even $4,000. It's the amount of money we didn't get, plus every one of those classes that we mounted cost us $5,000. And so the point is that in years past, we had enough money that we could pay for these things that we weren't getting funded for, but we no longer have that money. We no longer can afford to do that, which is now we have to bring our offerings in line with the money we receive from the state, until such time as we get enough reserves built up that we can afford to do that again. Does that make sense?
It makes-
Okay. You should have said no just to make it clear.
You said no, that's his story, he's taking too.
That's exactly right. Okay, so last week, Pinella said we should start talking about things other than this, right?
Maybe.
Maybe. So Pinella's got paper.
I have nothing, I
Okay,
know these are
okay.
speeches, I mean, if you wanna look at some great speeches. from
Okay.
others.
No, so what we did is we added a couple of items to the agenda to talk about based upon what we thought we heard last week. So one of the things that Crystal and her folks are working on is an update of the educational master plan summary document, which will do two things. One, it's going to report out where we are with our scorecard, our dashboard. Basically our degrees, our transfers, our degrees, our basic skills completion rate, CTE certificates. It's going to update that, and it's going to be a report on all the things that was accomplished in the 11-12 year that advanced the goals that are in the educational master plan. And Crystal thinks she's going to have that document ready by
July of 2013 is looking good.
no
Maybe not.
within
Probably within a month.
a month or so, exactly. So in a month or so. So we'll have that document be shared with the board. But what that's going to be is it'll be shared with this group, and it's going to be evidence of how we are tying our planning and our budgeting together. Our budgeting and planning together to accomplish the goals in the educational master plan. And so when that document is ready, that will come in here, and that will be a springboard for further discussion about how we continue to figure out how we're going to spend money. Then there's this topic about a survey, and I know Dwayne's been talking about a survey for months now, and I know Pinella had some thoughts. So let's just open up the floor to the notion, to what's on this agenda, survey, criteria for reductions, and how to build back 13 and 14, and just see where the conversation takes us.
I'd like to start off with the survey that, Dwayne, I know you've mentioned it before, but developing a survey around what people feel like are reasonable cuts, I think there had been something developed a while ago, right?
Soliciting ideas was the concept behind it. That while we know we'll get all kinds of interesting comments, hopefully out of, once we get past all of those interesting comments, that we'll actually get some really good ideas with respect to how we might be able to, reduce costs. I mean, obviously, we got to deal with the 90% side of the equation here, and maybe operationally, how we can improve some processes and things like that. We just do things differently and get some ideas from the college community. I just thought that was a good story.
I agree, and I think that would be a good thing, and I thought I had heard that there had been a sample survey started somewhere, is that?
We had actually developed it.
Okay.
We were looking for Rick to roll it out as part of the process.
Mhm.
And so I think it's still sitting on the shelf. We could pull that out, dust it off a little, and
Could we do this? Could maybe Dwayne and Crystal get together, look at the document, create a template, create something maybe next week? We are meeting, BRAC is meeting next week.
Yes.
Okay, then maybe next week we can actually look at the survey and agree upon it, tweak it, change it, whatever we want to do with it. And then possibly, maybe at the beginning of the year when people are back, implement it, or send it out now, or send it out 2 or 3 times, or whatever you think.
yeah, I wouldn't send it, personally, I wouldn't send it out now that faculty are gone.
Yeah.
But I really would look at trying to gather the ideas, since we're going to all intents and purposes be done with this year's budget by that time. But I can have someone work with Crystal and look at what's been developed. I think probably Jeff Lawn and Jeff Lawn is who actually kind of developed the original idea of it, and or the constructs of it, but it could be tweaked and probably should be tweaked based on those nonverbals from Crystal.
Yeah, exactly.
We
I'm
could,
feeling way over here.
We could,
Jeff Long just made me laugh.
but we could look at those things. It was really open-ended. It was really
Oh,
meant,
always a problem.
yeah.
Okay, anyway, this sounds like a great plan.
Yeah.
Dave?
If we get that survey emailed to us before the meeting, so we can take a look at it.
Probably not, depending on where we, I mean, if we're going to go through it while we're in the meeting, when that's the point, at least that gives us a few days to try to get together, because this is the last day of the week, and we have a few things going on for next week. And besides, we'd probably just make it a web link, so if you want to click on it, but let us have a chance to, it sounds like we may need to make some adjustments before we get that put out there. So I doubt very seriously we'd make it by BRAC.
Yeah,
But hopefully we can be done in time for BRAC and be able to show it.
even if it's a draft.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
If we can, Dave,
Right.
we will,
Yeah,
okay?
because, coming in here, if you have an idea of what the questions are, you could either, have a opinion of whether you want to keep the question or rewrite it.
Okay.
Well, and if you
but
have
if
some
you get an
ideas
idea-
about questions you might think would be beneficial, why don't you submit those ahead of time, too? That would be good.
Well, I'm not going to be here next week. I'm gone on vacation, but that's the reason why I wanted to see
Who
it.
approved that?
Yeah.
Probably. Well, actually, Rick did.
I just got Chronos.
Oh, well, we can fix that.
That's suspect.
I may have the longest Chronos list in the history of the college at this point. Crystal, were you gonna say something else? Okay.
Well, I'm just gonna, if we're not gonna watch it till the fall, until everybody's back, I'm not sure that there's a big hurry to have it here next week.
Okay, so let's just say that we're creating it, and I would, it was in the meeting this morning, and we were reminded that the fall is 1 month away. I mean, it's just around the corner, right? Oh, Hannah just,
Exactly my reaction.
sorry, Hannah.
I'm still teaching.
Yeah, but anyway, it'll be upon us pretty soon. Anyway, the survey's a great idea, and I think we'll move forward on that.
Just a comment.
Yes,
I think
sir.
sometimes we have to be careful what we ask for, because what you get back, I think you're gonna get all kinds of interesting comments. And probably largely around cutting one's salary. fire people.
Yeah, right.
Things like that.
I was
So
trying
how
to
do
be
you sift-
gentle.
Yeah, but how do you sift through that? I mean, who's gonna sift through that? I mean, you're gonna get all kinds of
You know,
relevant ones and irrelevant.
I'll share an interesting thing, and Dwayne and I were sort of in the middle of this week a little bit. We had a major air conditioning problem, Dave's well aware of it, in this building. It started last Thursday. There was some pipe that was leaking on one of Dwayne's servers down there, and it was a big problem. And they had to shut the boiler off or do something, so it was literally cold enough to hang meat in this building on Friday and Saturday. I mean, it was cold. And so in order to deal with that, the facilities guys and people did a great job, but we had to turn the temperature up a little bit, and we had to make some adjustments. And instead of it being 68 to 72, it was 75 to 78, and people were, you know, they felt like their world was coming to an end. And I had complaints from a few people, and I went in their offices, and it didn't feel that bad to me, okay? It just didn't feel, I mean, even now, it's not comfortable, but it's okay, right? Well, we're saving money. You know, it's sort of like, for those of us who have kids that are at home or whatever, and you go home and the house is at 68 degrees and you're just watching the meter do this, you know. If you're paying the bill, it makes a difference, right? So the point is that culturally, people have got to get into the mindset of saving money. And if it's a little bit warmer and we're potentially saving thousands of dollars a year in utility costs for it, then maybe we should do that for a while. Now, so the survey would be interesting to get back to people who say it's too hot, they say it's too cold or whatever, but we just have to sort of begin to think along those. If you were at home, you'd be thinking that way, right? So anyway, I think right now it's relatively comfortable, it's okay, right? But you'd be surprised how many complaints that we got from people when it was just a little bit warmer, not a lot warmer. And then the idea is, would you rather freeze to death? Because people literally were leaving here, going home sick, or you know their joints were hurting, or their sinusitis was kicking up because it was too darn cold. I'd rather be a little warm than a little cold, but that's just me. That was what's known as a bird wall. But still, it made the point. Everything's money, right? Anyway, so survey criteria for reductions and how to.
I think to answer that though, is I think we can aggregate it, but it also gives, because while we are all supposed to go back and talk to our different folks, for example, there are only 3 full-time faculty on here, right? We don't have time to go talk to every faculty member, and they may have some good insight about what could be cut. Same thing with all of the facilities. We don't have time to necessarily go around and pinpoint every single person and say, how do you think we should save money? But this is at least a way to get some innovative, or what we might call divergent thinking, involved in the
Diversion,
process.
I'm sure.
But that's kind of what we need, right? We want to have
part of it,
creativity.
yeah, part of it is just filtering through that, and the filtering may be perceived as censorship as well, you know, so.
But there are also certain things that we can't, like, we don't necessarily get to decide hiring and firing process.
Right.
So when that comes in, it's like, well, that's not our call, but we can talk about some of the other funding choices, right?
Well, you know, we could start a bring your own toilet paper day.
As a demonstration.
Demonstration. Now, the 8.2 item is really a good item, and it plays off the theme that Penella brought up last week, and Kent, you just talked about, which is, and I think, and Dan talked about too. Let's say we got $6.7 million back from the state. What is the criteria for how we would build that money back into the budget?
You guys would just ask me, and I would decide that I have a plan for that.
Thank you.
There we go.
And you know, we just went through a period where we came up with the 10.5. If this committee were really doing what it might have wanted it to do, we would have presented a plan for the 10.5. But we never got around to doing that, right? And there's all kinds of reasons for that. But we didn't. But now, as we go into next year, we should really think about how can we actually lead with a plan for consideration as opposed to react to a plan, which I think was your point.
Yeah, and I think actually getting the review from the EMP is going to be one of the things that becomes important for us, where are we being successful on campus? And I feel like that, as I looked at this item and heard that, I was like, I don't know if I'm prepared to talk about that.
Right.
If we're gonna get new data in the next month, that might make our conversation more informed.
Absolutely. And again, I just wanted to, I thought your point last week was very well taken, which is, we can keep rehashing these numbers until the cows come home. We can keep talking about pie charts this and graphs that and PowerPoints of that. But this is the more important work for this group.
Right.
And I think you're right. I think that'd be a good discussion to get into.
And so Crystal, you said that's gonna come in a month,
What?
the EMP?
Yes.
Okay. So that may be something we talk about, not in the next agenda, but once we can get that document to inform our choices a little bit more.
And then A2 there really informs what 2013-14 is going to be all about. Right?
Yeah. Because then we can make that informed decision,
Exactly.
once we know what we're doing right, you know, right?
Right. Okay, so, yes, Dave?
Yeah, Ted, those initiatives that we keep talking about, they're gonna need 66 2/3, aren't they? Because it involves taxes.
I don't think so. I think there's
There
several.
is
Majority,
plus
simple
one.
majority.
I think the
There.
majority.
So there is those taxes, I've heard just in the simple majority.
No, that's it.
Didn't there something happen in the last election that basically changed the law from the 66
Yes.
and 2/3 down to the 50%?
The only concern is if the Munger initiative passes and, yeah, and that's the concern. And I think that, I don't know if we can do that, but certainly having a conversation about how maybe we can all work together to encourage not just our students, but our faculty and staff to be involved in supporting the Brown initiative. I think maybe that's a good executive choice for us to do, right? Like, if we're counting on it, then perhaps we should work to support that as we're budgeting for next year.
Well, hopefully we can get people registered to vote.
Right.
Simon and Roger Marheim are working together to create a lobbying plan. And knowing Simon, he's probably all over that. And so I suspect we'll hear from him shortly or soon about that. Hannah, are you aware of anything like that?
Yes, they're working on creating that committee, but so far, the Associated Students Lobby Committee is working really hard to train students to register other students, to get them certified to do that on campus. Right now, we're fundraising and recruiting for a large-scale canvassing, strategy. Also, we're working with the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, the CC League, and we're hoping to work with the local fire department and hospitals to get them on board as well, because a lot of students from PCC become firefighters and nurses, so we're hoping to get them on board as well.
So it sounds like these are wonderful initiatives that staff and faculty and managers could join
Absolutely.
and be part of. And I'm sure that the strategists are figuring this out. Is that something you do in mid-September, late September, mid-October? When's the biggest bang for the psyche buck, if you will?
We get to be registered by October 4th in
Okay.
California. So it probably would behoove us to have voter registration forms in all of our offices. And if you have faculty, this is kind of what I do at this point, but is pass that out the first day when you're training all the way your students who can't get into your classes. And then say, hi, this is why, and pass out a.
I agree, I think it should be tied to the students' level of frustration of not being able to get what they wanted, and then having a notice that things can change if you vote.
So there are two pushes when we do campaigns like this. The first is to get folks to register, which has to happen by October 1st. And then the next is to get people to actually
Right.
go and vote, which is the next step.
So why don't we?
You need to make sure that you start early enough to get the absentee votes, because those are the ones that has major decisions going.
Well, as a person who's run statewide campaigns, it's really getting people the day of. Having absentees are great, because then the idea is you'll get those absentee folks to lobby people who go vote on the day. And so for us, because we're dealing with the student population, they're less likely to do absentee voting. They're more likely to do same-day voting if we encourage it.
So what if we did this. What have we asked, we've already asked this, but the notes reflect that Dwayne and Crystal are gonna be sort of the beginning of our survey committee. And maybe we can ask Hannah and Pinella to work together to come up with a voter registration / lobbying plan of action, for lack of a better term, that we as a group can then participate in and help to, we can do whatever it is that you guys need us to do in order to get these things to happen. Because that October 4th thing is interesting to me, I didn't realize that, because it's almost like you want to do two things. You want to get them that, and then like 2 days, 3 days, a week before, you want to hit them hard with go and vote for the Brown Initiative.
Which for us is really convenient because it's just at the drop date. So when everybody watches the classes and as people drop at that point, it'll also be a good moment to be like, and look at those 5 cloud chairs that are now empty that people were in. So
That's right.
students will.
Hannah,
It's
yeah.
Add that really quickly. It's like we're legally bound with the lobby committee not to spend any money on this campaign that we're doing. We're not allowed to spend any student representation funds on any sort of initiative or legislation. So we're going to be asking for donations. So that'll be coming very shortly as well. So any of you would like to donate to our campaign for printing costs, that would be.
I gotta warn my wife again that I'm gonna be ready to do that. Okay, that's good, yeah, thank you. John?
A couple of questions. One, how much can we do, obviously in athletics, we have a block of folks that we could, how much can we encourage or facilitate that both the registration and the voting process from an administrative or from a faculty position?
Overrun laps.
Bring back-
I mean-
in fact, I have voted sticker.
I mean, you can, and there are certainly, the ways that it's typically encouraged is to do it in kind of a policy neutral way, which is we are encouraging you to register to vote. We don't care how you register. We encourage you to vote for this initiative. We're not asking you which way to vote, but we're asking you to vote. Does that make sense? That's the law. However,
can we-
faculty members can do things like if you want extra credit and you bring back your I voted today, you can encourage that in your faculty, yeah.
Okay. And can we actually have them, we can give them the document to complete for registration. Could we have them complete it and then we turn all of them in?
Mhm.
Could we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. And my
And the
second-
nice thing is that we actually have mail on campus, so they can drop it off here too.
But I think what John is talking about, it might be good, just for the heck of it, to run the plan by Gail Cooper, our general counsel, and make sure that we're not running afoul of any, just like Hannah said, they can't spend certain funds on this type of thing because of whatever the regulations are. That's your point, right, John?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it dealt with facilitation also,
Yeah.
how we get the information to them, how much can we do to be
Yes,
sure that one, that they did register to vote,
Mhm.
and two, that they did vote.
Right.
Hannah and then Ken.
I guess one thing is just to leave some time during practice, or if this is some sort of class or, designated time to meet, for someone who's working on the campaign or supporting the campaign, rather, the initiative, to come and educate the students. We'll have a fact sheet ready really soon, and so it won't say like vote for this, but if this passes, this is what it means for you, kind of thing. So I think that would be a really good start, is just educating them, because I don't think most students know about the Brown Initiative. So
And you will have folks available to do that, Hannah?
we have about 30 students already. So.
My second question dealt with, is there information from a group on the profile of students, for example, maybe community college, and their voting patterns, any demographics on who does not vote? Is there anything like that available? And what I'm getting at is so if we can target certain populations.
18 to 24-year-olds don't vote. traditionally. So your returning students are likely to vote. So that's at least one of the basic levels. And so 18-24 across ethnicities, if that's what you're asking, that nobody votes 18 to 24. It's, I think in the last election, it was something like 2% of 18 to 24-year-olds in California voted. It was kind of a painful number, except that this is a presidential year, so that's the one thing that's going to make it more exciting. So the last presidential year, a lot more students showed up to vote for Obama.
Ken?
So my question, actually, Hannah, you answered it, is, can we talk about the consequences of having the Brown Act pass versus not pass? And have that as a fact sheet to students without telling them, vote this way, this is what would happen if the vote goes this way or that way.
I don't
That's
know, I would assume it is.
Okay.
I mean, it was just like talking about any other initiative, this
Okay.
one, does help us, so.
And maybe we could run that by Gail Cooper. But the other question is, because 18 to 24-year-olds typically don't vote, they might vote if it's convenient, if they're motivated to do so, if they realize that there's a connection between voting and, say, class availability. But also if it's convenient to them. Is there any way to have PCC become a polling place?
The problem is,
I don't know.
the problem is that, yes,
Oh.
but then you can only vote if you live in this area.
Okay, so you can't,
can't really do that. There's not like California didn't pass the full, it's called a motor voter, which is that you can go and vote anywhere. We have a partial version of what other states do, which is if you're near a polling place, in some other states, if you're just near a polling place, you can go vote even if it's outside of your traditional area. We don't have that in California. We have, it's partial, so you can sort of go and register, but then it becomes one of the temporary ballots, and so it doesn't necessarily get counted, and we don't want that.
Thank you.
Again.
Can I change the subject?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about the tram, because when you introduced it at the last Board of Trustees meeting, the trustees didn't seem like they were real happy about that. But my understanding of the tram is it's like a bridge loan.
Right.
We're getting money and we're gonna use money that would come, it's coming in later to pay back off.
Right.
But during the discussion, nobody ever called it that, or nobody referred to it that way. I was wondering if there's a reason why.
Well, at the board meeting, we explained, tried to explain several ways that the TRAN, which is a tax and revenue anticipation note, is a short-term borrowing instrument secured by receivables. In this case, the state revenue, the assessment revenue. And it's only good for 12 months, and we told them about that. And the problem is that the accountants of the world, basically, the money you have in the bank has to equal the money that you want to spend, or you are deficit financed.
Okay.
The TRAN money is not money that you have, it's money that's secured against a future receivable, therefore it's borrowed money and not considered to be an asset. Okay? So there are at least a couple of board members, actually maybe 3, that have a hard time with the notion of a deficit financed budget, an accrual budget that is balanced out of what in essence is borrowed money. What we presented to the board the other night, and what, if our situation gets worse or what have you, some of them may vote yes, holding their noses, but I think at least Dr. Mann, for example, was an example of somebody who said she wouldn't like it, but if forced to do it, she might do it. I mean, nobody made a commitment per se. I certainly wouldn't put words in Dr. Mann's mouth. But I know that the president, having mentioned it to me again just last night, is having a challenge keeping them all in that corral of actually approving the TRAN as one of the ways to balance. Because our 10.5 includes the 2 million TRAN. And there are board members who are saying, but no, it's 8.5. The problem, you really only have 8.5 of real money, and we really think you need to go find another 2 million real money cuts in order to balance your budget. What we were saying to them is that here we offer you a taxpayer revenue anticipation note as an option one for cash flow. We've got an RFP that will be hitting the streets, if not today, Monday for sure, I'll check with Mark Glansman, that is for a revolving line of credit, where through a local lender, we would get a revolving line, and so between our interfund borrowing from ourselves, the trans, and the local line of credit, we got plenty of money to get us through our $8 to $10 million a month operating budget issue. Actually, $9 to $10 million a month takes to operate the college, the cash issues. So that we're not constantly in this game. The President just called me before this meeting. He said, how much money do we have in the bank? You know, which, by the way, as of yesterday, was a little over $20 million in the bank. And he said, well, how, you know, do we need to do that for everybody? I said, no, we're going to be fine from the best of our projections through August. And then we're going to be back at a borrowing scenario again in August based upon, because we got 2 payments from the state totaling almost $19 million in the last couple of weeks. Which, by the way, the state still owes us a little over $5 million. 2.4 of that is deferred assessment revenue, and that they tell us we'll get in October. This is 11-12 money. The other 2.5, give or take, is RDA money, redevelopment agency money, which they don't have a clue when we're going to get it, because the state is holding all that money hostage. Bad word, but they're holding all that money to manage their cash flow issues. They're using that money to be able to pay us the assessment money, you know, or whatever. I mean, I don't know how many billions the state of California's budget is, but all that money goes out to people, and they have their cash flow issues as well. So they took all that RDA money back to redevelopment agencies, and they said, yes, and we're going to give it to the local agencies. And eventually they will, but not until they use it for their purposes of paying their bills. And the state budget is balanced. The last year's budget ended in a deficit, but it was balanced. It was, from a cash flow point of view, it was balanced on the basis of all the interfund borrowing that they did. See, we have, you know, 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 funds that we've got, right? Well, the state's probably got 1,000 of these funds, and they did their own interfund borrowing in order to balance the state's books. And that's a game they'll play until, like us, they run out of money to borrow. That's more than anybody wanted to know. Okay, it is now Dave Kraus.
Yeah, well, I think that the confusion was, is you're looking for a $2 million trans loan, but then I think you went in for another 10 million or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
That's where the confusion was, is are you gonna borrow 2 million or are you gonna borrow 10 million?
The bottom line was, and we tried to explain that as well, the minimum tran to make it for the, not bond companies, but the funding company, they put together this pool, the underwriters, are $10 million notes. So if you're going to play, you got to play for a minimum of 10. In some cases, it can be 5, but it's usually 10. The other thing is, if you're going to do it, if the cost of borrowing is so small, you might as well get the 10. I think at the end of the day, that 10 million would cost us $147,000, literally, and then you can play the arbitrage game, invest that 10 million that they give you, in some, even though it's only paying 0.5%, and actually come out with that money wouldn't cost you anything. And in better days, people would do, entities would do trans just to play the arbitrage. They borrowed the 10, they didn't, you know, they borrowed the 10 at, you know, 1.5% interest, and they'd invested at 3 or 4% interest, and they'd pocket the difference. That's called arbitrage. That happens all the time. But anyway, the point is that the 10 would literally cost us next to nothing. That's why the 10. And the more, and then if you had the 10, then you wouldn't have to do as much interfund borrowing, or you limited that, and then you wouldn't have to do the line of credit, which, by the way, the line of credit would get the RPs, the proposals back. That's not going to be that cheap either. You know, borrowing from your local bank is going to be more expensive by far than the trans. But it depends on what level of trouble you're in. We just were basically saying to the board, we need options. Which one would you like? It's not gonna hurt to put an RP on the street, it's not, you're not committing anything, they'll just give us information. All right, anything else for today? Felt like a good meeting.
That was
It was
nice.
a good discussion. Okay, so we'll be back at it again next week.
Do you need a motion?
Hey, I move that we
Adjourn.
David.
You can work from
I can't.
You can't.
I can-
Maybe you exchange it, refund.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Abstained? Forget it.
As people are out the door already.
I just want to make sure Mary gets it
We're
right.
meeting next week.
If anybody is going anywhere with students that can take muffins or cookies away, please take them or to